for me, collecting is really truly about the story and where it's come from and how we've gotten to the point that we are now with it and how that has helped to evolve not just the game, but the way things go in life. The simpler days to today that really kind of have changed the outlook of where the game was simply a game to now the game being much more of a business. Great privilege when I was growing up playing the game of hockey. I remember going to the arenas with my dad, and he would take me to play, and after the game I would always ask for a pack of hockey cards. And I always looked forward to that almost as much as I did playing the actual game. And especially when you'd open up those cards at the end, I would always hope to get the hometown Toronto Maple Leafs. One pack turned into two turned into five, and every week I would look forward to getting them. Anytime I got an allowance, anytime I had any money, I'd run down to the corner store and buy a couple packs of hockey cards. Next thing you know, cards turned from one set into almost 100,000 sports cards at one point, where I had significant sets, and the collection had just grown to a point where I had pretty much everything that I wanted to in that area. So I found an interest in game used stuff. Again, going to the Maple Leaf Gardens as a young kid, walking in the front doors with your dad was incredible. You'd walk in and you'd see the pictures on the walls and the lifelike images as you'd walk in. It was almost like the ghosts would stand out at you. And some of my greatest memories were with my dad in the stands sitting in section 67, row F, seats 1 and 2 in the greens. I'll never forget that. My dad had brought home a hockey stick, and on that hockey stick they had one entire half of it shaved off, one side of it shaved off, where a bunch of the players had signed. And I thought, to me, that was the coolest thing, because you couldn't just go into the store, Sears or Simpsons or anything, and just buy something like that. You could buy a jersey, you could buy a t-shirt, but anybody could have that t-shirt. I like the one-offs, I like the one-ofs, one-of-a-kind, things that you just can't get in a store. Quite often, people will say, have you ever thought about selling the collection, or, are you comparing yourself to others that are collectors? And for me, it's never been about that. To me, it's all about the story behind everything. I'd love the thought of walking in and being able to see the past and learning about where this team has come from. So for me, every unique piece, every story behind it actually adds to the history of this team. And that's what really gets me excited about it, is the uniqueness behind each and every piece, and the fact that it has a story. I remember going in as a kid, and you'd walk in and you'd see the row of Stanley Cup champions from the past. And when you'd walk in, especially in a playoff game, it was almost like they just came alive. And so I had the opportunity to acquire that particular piece, and it's a big piece. It's about 6.5 feet by 5 feet, and so it's a pretty dominating piece. And it's one that I've never thought that I'd have the opportunity to own, but I do, and so that's one of my absolute favorites. The Bill Barocco hockey stick from when him and his brother had opened up the Barocco Brothers TV shop. It wasn't just TVs, they sold everything from fishing worms to sporting goods, and so he had opened a store with his brother before he passed away. And on the grand opening of that store, they had given away little cardboard hockey sticks, and not many people have ever seen one. And I was lucky enough to come across one that's signed by 3 players from the opening day of that store, and one of them was Bill Barocco. So that's a pretty neat piece as well. I really enjoy that one. Ted Kennedy, I was lucky enough to track down in the mid-90s, working at Fort Erie Racetrack. And I had gotten an autograph sheet that I was missing his autograph. So I reached out to him and just simply asked him, I was hoping that maybe I could get an autograph on the similar sized piece of paper to frame with the rest of the team. And it was amazing how, when I had just brought up the 1946-47 team to him, he went on for about 45 minutes about stories about the team. He invited me down to the racetrack and wanted me to come down. And you know, it's amazing how the previous players in a lot of ways are so humble and will never understand the aura that's around them and what they've done for the game for where it is today. And I don't know if it'll ever be truly appreciated. A buddy of mine had a Ted Kennedy 1953 jersey. I had always wanted a wool jersey and Ted Kennedy, because of the fact that I had talked to him and had the chance to actually have a good chat with him, became one of the players that I wished that I could have truly watched play. And here I am looking at a Ted Kennedy jersey, game used, photo matched, ready to go, and I wanted that jersey. And the jersey was available for trade, except it was going to cost me quite a bit. And so part of the package that I had traded was Bobby Hull's last jersey that he wore in the National Hockey League with the Hartford Whalers. So when I was bringing it to the show in Toronto here, I had wanted to get a picture with Bobby with the jersey before we had made the deal. And when I walked up to Bobby, I said, Mr. Hull, I said, I've got, this is your last jersey that you wore in the National Hockey League. And he looked at it and he said, do you want to sell that jersey? I'd really like it. And I said, well, Mr. Hull, I've actually made a trade for that jersey. And he said, well, who'd you trade me for? And I said, I traded you for Ted Kennedy. He looks at me and goes, that's a pretty good trade. So I thought it was kind of funny coming from him and the respect that he had for Ted Kennedy. And he did mention that. It was an amazing day to be able to meet, Mr. Hull and have him show the ultimate respect for one of the greatest Maple Leafs of all time. I was given a card and mentioned that Johnny had wanted me to give him a call. I was like, Johnny who? And he said, Johnny Bower. And so I was kind of taken back, because obviously one of the greatest, not only hockey players, but people of all time, had wanted to come over and see my collection. And that was the day that I kind of realized that maybe I had something a little bit more than I had just realized. I'm still taken back when people walk down here and let me know what they think of the collection. I still see it as just my kind of fun junk put together. And to have Johnny Bower on the phone, and what a privilege it was to speak to him on the phone, and how excited he was to want to come out and see the collection that I had and talk about some of the pieces that I had. That was amazing, and unfortunately I was one of the last people to speak to him before he was hospitalized, and we lost him, unfortunately, and lost a great person. The Johnny Bower net, the one really unique thing was that after he had passed away, I had posted on social media that I was lucky enough to speak to him before he had gone, and it was really sad that I never got a chance to actually have him over. And a gentleman had reached out to me from Columbus, Ohio, and had mentioned that he had a net that Johnny Bower had protected for 13 years in Columbus. And he'd bought it for his dad, who's a big Cleveland sports fan, and they couldn't fit it in the house. So it had been sitting outside for many years. And so he had taken the netting off, and it had been sitting out there, and it was basically deteriorating and getting to a point where it was almost ready for the scrapyard. Immediately the next day I rented a U-Haul and made my way down nonstop down to Columbus, Ohio to pick up this net and come back. A lot of people thought I was crazy, especially the guy at the border when he asked me what I was doing. And I said I had just come down to pick up a hockey net. And so it was an interesting one, and drove down as quickly as I could, got it back, and then conducted a full restoration. It was past the point of trying to keep the original, it in its original state. So it was required for a full restoration, and so I managed to put it all back. I took a lot of pride in it, and it meant a lot because obviously the influence that someone like a Johnny Bower had on not just as a hockey person, but if you hear the stories that he, what he did for kids and the constant, charity work that he did, I'm honored to have anything that belongs to him in my collection. I was lucky enough to have Frank Mahovlich in the house here, walking around, looking around at the collection, and I was kind of blown out of the water. Here's one of the greatest, not just Toronto Maple Leafs, but hockey players of all time, and classy people as well. I mean, he was a part of the Senate. He was part of, of the changing game as well, from the 60s to the 70s, and so you have this gentleman in your house, and he was taken back, and I was. Sometimes you don't realize that when a person walks in and they tell you they've never seen anything like this before, and so for me that's a great privilege, and I've had a couple of the others over as well, and when they walk down, it almost feels like when they come down here that they go back in time, and it allows them to open up with some stories. I was lucky enough to have Jim McKenney here as well. And the stories that he has, if I've met a better person in life, I can't remember. And the stories that he had when he came down here, looking through the old hockey cards, and it was just a privilege. We always want to be a fly on the wall, and that's what we always talk about. And I found that the few times that that's happened, I get to be the fly on the wall, and I get to actually sit back and just let them, share the memories and the stories that they have, and some of the ghosts that come out with it. You almost feel the presence of others around them. This is some of the greatest memories that I have with my dad, right? So it really does tug at the heartstrings a little bit, because I don't even know that he realized how much it meant to me until years down the road. I'm sure it meant a lot to him taking his son to hockey and stuff. When I knew that I was going to be going to the game with my dad, it really, it was that moment. We would go to the same restaurant. We'd go to Swiss Chalet before every game, and we'd be there at the same time. And you'd go to the game and the organ would play, and when certain beats of the organ would go, you'd bang knees, and so it was just, it's the moment that I don't know that you'll ever forget. And recently, just this year, I went back to a game with my dad, and again, we hadn't been to a game in years, because he goes to Florida and stuff for winter, and we had gone to a game together, and right away when the organ started playing, we banged knees just like it was when we were kids, and it was almost like time had just not forgotten what those memories were like for you as a kid. I've had some crazy offers for a few of the things that I have, and people say, well, why wouldn't you sell it? And I just don't want to. I like what I've got, and I like the stories behind it again, and for me it's about maintaining that history and being able to walk in and kind of think I have something that no one else has. And it's not about putting me in a status by any means. It's just about sharing the story. When I have my friends over, quite often they'll come over and watch the games with me, and we'll sit down there. It might be tight in some spaces, but and some of them are afraid of touching things, but for me, it's really all about the moment. Why not create more ourselves? And that's kind of what I enjoy about it. The only way that I want to be known as is just another fan, and I enjoy that. Again, it's brought me some great friendships. It's brought me some great opportunities, and to meet people that really kind of add to the whole story. And I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm hoping that it'll end up in a spot. It may end up in the Hall of Fame, but wherever it ends up, I just hope that the story can continue.
I asked Bobby Orr one time. I said, "Who do you think is the greatest player?" He said, "No doubt, Gordy." I said, "Look at the stats." He said, "Just look at the stats." He said, "There's no doubt in my mind. He could do it all." I've been collecting for about 60 years at least. And we used to go down at Olympia and go down in the basement. They used to let us go, as they would come out of the dressing room, they used to sign for us. And, there's one guy that always just didn't like signing is Terry Sawchuk. He was kind of different. And every time I asked him, he would say, F off, kid. Well, I had a program that I have everybody, and I still got it, every signature, every Roger Crozier. And I kept asking him, and that kept telling me the same thing. And Gordy was behind him one time, and he said, hey, Terry, he said, what does Jack Adams tell us? To sign for the fans because they pay our way. He said, you sign it for the kid, I'm going to break both your legs and arms and you'll never play hockey again. And Terry took it from me and he's cussing me like he don't believe, but he signed it and I still got it. I used to follow Gordy all the time, and he knew me at signings, and then I started helping, and then when Colleen, his wife, got sick, and we used to travel, and he asked me, he said, do you mind, you think Rita, my wife, would mind if she comes with us so she can keep an eye on Colleen? And Rita loved it. And that's really when we really became really good friends. He's a great guy. Had patience with kids. When the kids used to notice his van in the neighborhood, they used to come running, knock on the door, and sometimes I had, like 20 kids are over, and he used to start playing street hockey with them. I used to pick him up, and when my grandkids played, it was fun. My grandkids called him Uncle Gordy, and he got, it's having snowball fights and everything else, and he just became my best friend. I remember one time when Colleen started, getting sick, Gordy got her a little puppy. His name was Rocket. Okay, and she used to carry him with her all the time. Went to Montreal one time and talking to Rocket, and Gordy said, hey, Rocket, I got a new dog. He said, oh, yeah, that's nice, Gord. He said, I named the dog Rocket. He said, you did what? You named the dog after me? He said, yeah, Rocket, but I love my dog. And Rocket said, oh, okay. But as much as they were fighting over, at the ice, and stuff, they were friends. They used to go golfing together. Off the ice, they were friends. When my wife was alive, I started putting stuff in the hall, and all she did was look at me. Okay, I understand. That's your space. I won't take it. When Gordy was down here, I couldn't get him up. My wife would start yelling, dinner is ready. Come on, bring Gordy up. He's talking about what he did to this guy, how he ran this guy into the boards. And, he would never, it's just his way of, I think, reliving it or, of remembering. The game news stuff, that's the real stuff. Wayne Gretzky skates, that he wore those when he was winning the cups and with the Oilers, 83. Then I got a pair of old Bobby Orr skates, really old, that are there. And I wouldn't, I'll pass those on to my kids. I got Gordy's rookie stick, and they've been offering me tons of money for it. I just won't part with it. And that's the only one. I was asking Marty, I said, do you guys, I know they have a lot of milestone sticks, right? They don't have that one. I got the only rookie stick, his one rookie stick. He said he used it for 3 years. And he marked it like that for me. Can you imagine using a hockey stick for 3 years? He used to cut his sticks right below the, he liked them like below the chin. And he used to tape them himself. And another thing he used to do, put tape on the bottom, like really thin rolls of tape. Every time he scored the goal with that stick, he would take one off. I saw 8 cups in my life. The last 4, and then the 4 in the 50s. In 1955, when we beat Montreal in 7 games, and that's the year that Maurice was suspended for cutting the linesman. I was 17 years old, and I was at that last game when we beat Montreal. I think it was 3-1. It was Gordy got the winning goal, and Alex got 2 goals in that game. And that was when Ted Lindsay picked up the cup and went around the ring. That's the first time I touched the Stanley Cup from the chicken wire they had at Olympia. Well, he used to come to my office every day or come over here. Gordy would sit on one side of the couch having his ice cream and apple pie, his favorite. He would have it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My wife always made sure we have enough apple pies here. Yeah, I mean, 25 years is a long, long time. And I knew him before that. For my grandkids and my kids to have, I think I got more pictures of them with Gordy than, I had spent a whole day with Gordy in Sylvania, Ohio, the week before he passed away. And I knew that would be the last time I see him. He was sleeping mostly. He recognized me, he squeezed my hand, he tried to talk. But when I left that day, I knew. When Murray called me that Friday morning, and he told me his father had just passed away, they were taking my wife to hospice when I answered the call. And then, she died the next day. I lost my soulmate and my best friend in 2 days. I like the hockey stuff and going, but his friendship means more to me. I never would have met Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, and all these other great ones. I mean, they were friends. John Bellevue, they're great. Bobby Hall, all of them, really. Just reminds me of the friendship I have.
We started something, gonna tell the world again. Oh, you're so beautiful, I just can't hold it in. I think we started something, I hope it never ends. I hope it never ends.
competitive. I think in all cities, NHL cities, there is going to be competitive. There's going to be elation and disappointment of not getting what they've been going after. We've all been there, where a fellow collector has picked up something that we really were trying to get and just didn't end up getting it. It's just a matter of sometimes timing, sometimes buying at the right price or making a heavier offer than normal. Started off playing hockey around 10, 11 years old. My godfather gave me my first pair of skates and stick and a puck. And I would just play, in pond hockey and that. And then wanted to get a little more organized and ended up playing in house leagues and things like that. And then I moved up when I was 13 to my first travel tryout. And I had to beat my best friend to get on the team, in which I did, and he was not happy about it. In that organization, it was Chicago Saints, as they were called, and my cousin and Chris Chelios were already in that organization. So I kind of joined the group. I was a year older than them, so I was on the A team one year and then the B team the next, which my cousin and Chris would come up with that group. With a very elite group, very, very good group of hockey players. Chelios family is definitely a hardworking family, and both on and off the ice. Chris's dad, my dad, grew up in the same area as kids in Greece, so they did know each other. We didn't know each other on social basis. Always good to see someone make it and make it far. In the '86 season, also we were invited to the game, and then afterwards to have soup and sandwiches with the Montreal Canadiens and Chris Chelios. So myself, my uncle, and my cousin and I went and sat down with Chris. His brother was there, and a few other people, and not a few other people, but other players were around us who were complete Hall of Famers. And we were just oblivious to who was around, like Bob Gainey, Robinson, Patrick Roy, who was a young lad just getting into that season. And then eventually they won the cup that year, which was kind of unique. And it was you had soup and sandwiches with those guys. And I spent time at Gunzo's, was the customizer for a long time, just hanging out and watching these guys work, cutting tackle tool numbers, by hand. Putting jerseys together, and I saw a lot of that there. I even, while hanging out, was asked to run items down to the Chicago Stadium, and I'd hang out there for several years. And eventually I got the itch. I'm 22 years old, and I'm like, I need to get a Blackhawks jersey. It's like a game-worn jersey. Didn't really get one, but my first jersey was a 82-3 Steve Shutt Montreal Canadiens. Which I bought and had a hard time selling. You got to remember, social media was non-existent. Writing or telephone, actually having phone conversations with other people, dealers or collectors, was the only way to get things done. Eventually, I do obtain 85 playoff meshes through a team source, and that's kicked off my situation, so to speak, for the Hawks, because I've always wanted Hawks. So, and I was never able to get them. So eventually, my need and want was really starting to resonate. I wanted to get these jerseys, and I had special players that I really liked, like Al Secord, Dennis Savard, Steve Larmer, as they were infamous lines. So I started to try to find people that had things. The very first I got was the 93-4 red with the alternate, which is featured in Sports Collectors Digest. Actually got it off of an employee for a good amount. He says, since it's all beat up, I'll just sell it to you for X amount of dollars. And I was like, I don't care what you ask for it. It's like, well, I want it. So since then, it's grown through various channels. One of them came from Patrick Waugh, so we did a purchase from him. One came from Bernie Nichols. I got to give Bernie some props here. He's a good guy. And they come from anywhere, basically, just from just eBay to collectors or just player direct. I was started as a season ticket holder in 1981, so I had box seats, 5 rows off the ice. The Hawks shoot twice, so it was great. So I saw a lot of goals. Seeing everybody on the ice, it gave that energy. I enjoyed, obviously, the logo and the uniform is my favorite of all time and always should be since I'm born and bred in Chicago. First, you start collecting just to collect. Then you start building criterias and sub-criterias to that. There's a mental library that I have that goes on certain criteria that every jersey has to meet. Most collectors have a little bit of this knowledge, and then there's some years there they're kind of a gray area situation where they're not sure why it was done or how long certain jerseys were worn. I've been called on numerous situations, like, for instance, I had to drive 2 hours north because somebody had a Bobby Hull jersey. And of course, I jumped in the car and ran and found out it was just a store-bought replica. And then I give the news to the gentleman that had it, and I go, it's not worth a whole lot. I go, it's sentimental to you, and you should hold on to it. The 87, 88 red jerseys, which had the home Tomahawks put on there and became anomaly jerseys over many, many years. Nobody wanted to buy them. And then of late, they're the hottest thing right now to collect. When Gunzos didn't want to pay the NHL a fee, CCM does them. And basically just crests and patches and shoulder patches, everything. And then the customizations came later as far as nameplates and that. So they start out with the whites. Poor sower at CCM didn't realize that there are different colored Tomahawks that go on the roads, and kept putting the Tomahawks for the whites on the road jerseys. It became an obscure oddball set. And so they go to try to sell them. Nobody wants them because they're wrong. Decades go by, and it's like all of a sudden this shit takes off because it's an anomaly. Out of the 40, I have 4 in there, and there's about 5 more out there that other collectors have. So that's kind of the obscure set. From left to right, we've got a 69-70 Bobby Hull, 82-3 Al Secord, 92 finals Jeremy Roenick, and a 61 finals Al Arbor. The first 3 that I mentioned are the only 50 goal scorers for the Hawks, and the Secord and Roenick jerseys are the actual jerseys that they scored 50th goal in. Roenick, he's a 500 goal scorer. He hits the criteria for the Hall of Fame. There's evidence on all his jerseys that he wore that he, a lot of repairs, a lot of wears, a lot of scuffing, a lot of blood stains, and you name it on all those. Hawk Quarters was the team store, and they did a sealed bid auction this was the only jersey to be bid on the entire white set. So I ended up getting it. I was very happy with it and walked out of the store, and I forgot about all the other jerseys that they had, So I go back about 2 days later, and then they had sold most of them at straight sale. So I missed my Chris Chelios finals jersey there. So I'm disappointed with myself. I'm not thinking, because I was so excited to get the most exciting Blackhawk, on the team. It does get expensive. We're a small circle. There's new era collectors too, which are buying through marketing companies or dealers or directly from the team that do get these nice items, but they pay as much as a vintage jersey. Connor McDavid jerseys are in the mid-teens. Matthews in the mid-teens. They make more of them than they will Jeremy Roenick or Chris Chelios jerseys. The way to collect is that we try to buy at value, and we try to buy it at something we could live with, and then we overpay. The overpay is gonna have a lot of emotional attachment, or for one reason or another, you were at this particular game and you witnessed something. My thing with the 92, I have a fondness for 92 Hawk Finals jerseys, and have a few others besides that, and the red mate to the Roenick, which I never thought even existed because I thought Jeremy Roenick had it. And I was offered by a hockey jersey dealer this situation, which I completely jumped on immediately. So you never know when things start turning your way. Same with the El Arbor Finals. I drove 2 hours away from here to a sports auction. This was the only hockey jersey was there, and I knew after passing up on Earl Balfour that I was not going to let this one get away. So I've only seen two, and I own the one out of two. So it's a very unique year too, because it's actually my birth year, 61.
When I turned 10 years old, my father surprised me with a pair of tickets to go see the Hartford Whalers. And that was our local team at the time. They were playing the Calgary Flames. It was March 20th, 1983. Game, I believe, ended in a 2-2 tie. I remember watching the game, and I said to my father, I'd really like to catch one of those pucks on the ice. And when we were up during intermission, somebody knew him, my father, one of the security guards that worked actually down on ice level, where the players walk in and out. And I heard my father say to him, "Hey man, I need a puck." And so during the game, my father got up during play, and he came back and just threw this frozen hockey puck in my lap, and it was awesome. I remember the feel of it. I remember putting it in my jacket and trying to dry it, but it was a really special moment, and I kept that puck all these years, and later had Ron Francis sign it. So I guess that was my first piece of hockey memorabilia right there that night, and it's kind of grown from there. I remember being in the car with my father, and he said to me, "Hey, do you like Wayne Gretzky?" And I said, "Who's Wayne Gretzky?" And he's like, "He's supposed to be this amazing hockey player." And I said, "Sure," and he's like, "Well, I can get tickets to go see the Edmonton Oilers. They're supposed to be the best team, ever. And so I said, yeah, great. So my father got tickets to see the Edmonton Oilers, and I began to follow, this guy, Wayne Gretzky, and see what he was all about. And I just, as any kid would do, you want to root for the winner. And the Edmonton Oilers had this flashy, amazing style of play with this colorful cast of characters. Every single person on the team seemed to be amazing, and I just fell in love with that team. 1989, Gretzky was on the Kings, and I walked down to where the players would walk out, and back then you could get really up close and you could pat the guy on the shoulder pads if you were daring enough, or you could even say something to them. You could ask them for an autograph. I mean, nowadays you really can't get close to the players. There was a coach at the time, his name was Tom Webster, and I was begging this guy. I saw that there was Gretzky sticks lined up, and the next thing you know, Gretzky was walking out and handed me a stick, okay? And I'm like, wait, I gotta get you to sign it, but he was already back in the locker room. Later on in that season, the Kings came a second time. I went to follow the players after the game. They would stay at the hotel nearby, so you knew that after the game, they'd be eating in a local restaurant or walking to a bar or something like that, and you could get an autograph. So I walked up to one restaurant, found Wayne Gretzky, had him sign a bunch of cards. Bernie Nichols walked in and said, hey, Wayne, do you want to get something to eat? And he said, sure. And they sat down in a booth. And I only lived 20 minutes away. And I said to my grandfather, I said, Grandpa, we got to go home and get the stick, okay? So my grandfather, he got us in the car and he flew. We flew back to the house. We got more cards. We got the stick. We got a Polaroid camera, as you see. We have that Polaroid of me and Wayne Gretzky. We got back there. I ran up to the restaurant. I was huffing and puffing, and Gretzky said, "Easy, guy, easy." He took the stick. He said, "I wonder if I've got some more goals left in this one." He signed it beautifully. He signed all of our cards. I asked him for a picture. He allowed me to jump in the booth with him. Bernie Nichols got up, let me in the booth, and I got my picture taken with Gretzky. He didn't have to do that. Most people wouldn't do that, but he did. With all of my pieces, it brings back childhood memories, good memories. I remember my very first memory of Messier was I saw him in a press box at a Hartford Whalers game. He was a scratch that night, and he was way up at the top, and he was watching the game with a very intense look. I walked up and I asked him for an autograph. He took my cards. He took the bill of my cap, and he pulled it down so he could keep watching the game, okay, and sign the cards. He was that focused, that intense, that he pulled my cap down, but that was the memory, that stuck with me. To New Yorkers, he's known as the Messiah. He came to New York City and he did what no one else could do. He ended the 54-year drought of the Stanley Cup. He took the pressure and he embraced it like no other, and he was a leader like none other. And there's just a certain, magnetic personality that he has, and an intensity that he had that just kind of drew you in as a fan. That was the ultimate New York Rangers jersey to get. He is the greatest New York Ranger of all time. There's no question about it. So when I started collecting jerseys, I thought, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to have a Mark Messier jersey, game worn. Little did I know it would cost more than, your average car, but I wanted it, and I was willing to do what I had to do to get one. Game 1 of the 1994 Stanley Cup Finals, I remember seeing him walk into Madison Square Garden. I was out in the lobby area, and he walked up. Nobody even noticed him. It was like maybe 1 PM, and he just walked into Madison Square Garden. And I went, "Hey, there's Mess!" And everyone just started cheering, and he got this unbelievable look of happiness on his face, this excitement. And those memories, they don't go away. Yeah, I mean, you remember things like that. One year I was chosen to get a blue shirt off the back of a Rangers player. And, the Rangers player, it's not the end of the last game. They wear a jersey for one game and they hand it to a fan. And I remember getting that jersey and saying to myself, man, I really wish this was Henrik Lundqvist, and I didn't realize that, hey, these things are available. You can buy these things, you can find them, and I got involved with the Facebook forums, and I had a bunch of baseball and hockey cards, signed baseballs and things like that. And I began selling off a lot of that stuff to buy the stuff that really mattered to me. And I kept saying, oh, geez, once I have a Messier jersey, that's it. I don't need anything else. I've got the Messier. Well, that changed to trying to get other players from the 94 team, which changed to trying to get the Edmonton Oilers, that I grew up cheering for. And it's almost like you're trying to reassemble the team, or you're trying to reassemble a team, and like with hockey, you're never done. You're always trying to get, better players on your team. You're always trying to trade jerseys for things that you like more or mean more to you, not necessarily a better jersey, but, something that just would mean more to you. I recently owned 3 Mark Messier jerseys, and I recently sold one of them off so that I could get the Grand Fuhrer. Now, Messier and Grand Fuhrer are very, very comparable in terms of they're both Hall of Famers. They're both legends. One is not better than the other. However, I had multiples of one thing, and I had the opportunity to get something that I didn't have, someone that I used to root for. I actually found that jersey on eBay, and it was just being sold as a Marcel Dionne game-worn jersey. There was no provenance with it. There was no paperwork with it. And, there were not very good photos of the jersey up there. So I'd asked the seller for more photos of the jersey. He sent them to me, and I saw team repairs on it. I saw a lot of stick marks, and then I started searching the internet to see if I could find pictures that matched those stick marks, or a photo match as we call it in the hobby. And the first picture I pulled up was the picture of him and Phil Esposito that you see right there. And I sat down with my wife on the couch and I go, that's the same jersey. She said, no, she said. I'm like, yeah, that's the same jersey. And then I called up one of my friends and I said, take a look at this. Someone I trusted, obviously, that wouldn't, scoop it out from under me. And he and I both agreed, and I made a deal for the jersey, at a fair price. And I sent it off to a company called My Gray, which authenticates jerseys based on photo matching them and other characteristics of the jersey. And we were able to video match the jersey to Marcel Dionne scoring his 718th goal. And, I'm definitely pretty proud of that one. Valuations seem to constantly be going up. There is a demand. Collectors keep reflecting back, like I have done, on the players that they watched when they were younger, and there is definitely a demand for that vintage or older or premium item. Something like a Connor McDavid jersey, which is a wonderful jersey that many people would love to have. Every single jersey that man wears will most likely be sold unless he keeps it himself. So there's constant that flow of the jerseys entering the population, and if you have the money, you can get it. Whereas with the older stuff, you have to find it, you have to get someone who's willing to give it up, or you have to compete for it in an auction. And these auctions, these premium auctions, they last a month, where you'll sit there for that whole month and you'll be checking that auction every day, and you keep saying to yourself, oh, I think I can get this, I think I can get this. But then that night the final night comes along and it quickly jumps out of your price range, and you have to say, you know what, I can't really go any further on this. It can be fun. It can also be very aggressive because, you have so little of the premium things out there. Like, for instance, the Edmonton Oilers, they might only have worn one jersey a year. So the competition to get, something of that caliber is very intense. And collectors, while there's a camaraderie, when you know that someone has something and you want that particular piece, you might not want to tell, some of your friends, your colleagues, where that piece is, knowing that, hey, they might try to get it as well. So it's kind of, it's almost a game of cat and mouse, so to speak. And you're always chasing the grail. As soon as you get your hockey grail jersey, there's another one that you're going after. I mean, I just found that Grant Fuhr and, was able to get it, and I'm already thinking about the next one the next amazing jersey that I know of that I want to add to my collection. It's obviously Gretzky. His jerseys are the most in demand. They're extremely expensive. There's some of them that cost more than my house. I don't know that I'll ever, have the means to own one, but I would love to. That would be the ultimate. And I think you kind of keep working your way up to that. I'd like to own the core 4 of 94, as we call it. Messier, Adam Graves, who I have as well, Brian Leach, and Mike Richter. So I need a Leach and a Richter still. To have that memorabilia on the wall, every time I look at my 92-93 Messier jersey, I don't think about the money I spent on it. I think about, wow, I have that on my wall. He wore that. This thing went through battles and wars. He scored goals in it. The trainer sewed up his arm on it. Just really cool. I think, for a collector, there's nothing better than having a game-worn jersey. That's the pinnacle, I think.
And you remember those little quarter football helmets you used to get in the gumball machines? I think it started with something as simple as that. And I loved taking that extra quarter and getting a football helmet and trying to get the whole set of teams, and ice cream helmets when you go to the game with baseball games, same kind of thing. I guess it's a way to be a part of the game for someone who never really got to be in the game. That started when I was a kid, 6 or 7 years old. My uncle actually got me into the Bruins back in the 70s. I'd stay a lot with him. When my mom was working or something, we'd stay a lot with my uncle. He was a big sports fan. Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots, all the teams. And back then, back the days of 4 channels on the TV, and the Bruins and the Red Sox were on Channel 38. So when we'd go up to stay with my Uncle Sid, we'd watch the games on Channel 38, and he got me hooked. And from then on, I was a Boston sports fan for life. Growing up in the 70s and the 80s, we took our success where we could get it, because the Red Sox always had the story of the curse, and they were the, not the lovable losers, but they were always the team that would come so close and break your heart. But still, they were a lot of fun to watch. You had the Celtics. Their best days were behind them, their glory days of the 60s. I kind of caught the tail end of that in the mid-70s. They won a couple of championships. But then in the 80s, the big 3 came. Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale came, and they were the team for that time. And they won 3 championships. And the Bruins were there. They always did well, but they always fell just short of the Canadians. The Canadians were always just that little bit better than them. And they made a few cup runs, but could never get it. I was a little bit after the big bad Bruins era, so I didn't get to see them. And the Patriots were just, the losers, the lovable losers back then. But then, yeah, around 2000, it all started to change. I mean, the Patriots won that Super Bowl in 2001, and just it took off from there. And every team started winning and competing. And so everybody loved the teams back earlier, but it became different. Now we got to enjoy success, and it was just a totally different feeling around here. And we keep waiting for it to stop. I mean, realistic fans keep waiting for it to stop, and it hasn't. But someday the shoe is going to drop, but I don't think the passion for the teams will go away. These pucks behind me, these are autographed pucks. All players who have played at least one game with the Boston Bruins from their beginnings in the 20s to, I don't have any that old from the 20s, but to today. So there are 576 different autographed pucks. I think that's the number right now, and it's always growing. It's funny, when I started this puck wall, it was probably this high. And now you see I'm having a problem. I'm kind of running out of room. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but I don't know what I'm going to have to do next. I'm going to have to make a few alterations here to fit the next generation of pucks on here. I remember getting Bobby Orr's was one that just, I've not been starstruck very often, but the first time I met Bobby Orr, I got to say I was starstruck, because he was the man. He was a legend growing up. So to get to meet him, and he was just the nicest guy. And I've heard a lot of stories about Bobby Orr, and I've never heard anybody say a negative word about him, and he'll give you the time. And he was, at the time I got his autograph, he was a tough autograph to get, because his opinion has always been that I don't want to sign an autograph for you and then have you go sell it and make $200 off of my signature. So back then he didn't sign very often, but I went to a Bruins carnival. They used to have an event every year where all the players would sign autographs, and he was there, and he's got the famous picture of him diving through the air after the goal in 1970, and he was signing those. And I asked him, Mr. Orr, would you mind signing a puck for me? And he kind of looked at me, sizing me up. Are you one of those guys, those eBay guys, But he did, and he personalized it. And he said, well, who would you like me to sign it to? Because I don't sign autographs unless I personalize it. So you can write whatever you want on it. So he signed it, and it's up there on the wall with all the other ones. So that might be one of the toughest ones. Ray Bourque, I would have to say, might be the guy who got me into the heavy-duty collecting, because I did some collecting when I was a kid. Like I said, the simple stuff. And when I started having a family, I wanted to, start doing that. We were all big hockey fans. Me and all my friends, we played hockey. We watched the Bruins religiously. And Ray Bourque came to town and was doing an autograph signing, him and Rick Middleton. And so we went to the signing and got to talk to them, and they both couldn't have been nicer, and they spent time and talked to everybody who showed up, and I think that's what hooked me. They were so nice and personable, and from there, all right, let's get the next guy who comes, the next guy, and then we went to that Bruins carnival I was telling you about and picked up, everybody on the team. It's like, oh, I love this, and I was hooked, and that's where it started, and it hasn't slowed down since. Right up here, we got all Bruins who in the Hall of Fame now, so yeah, Ray Bourque is right there, right next to Bobby Orr. Harry Sinden used to say, if I was down a goal late in the game, I'd want Bobby Orr on the ice. If I was ahead a goal, I want Ray Bourque on the ice. Another favorite, when he came in, he came in, again, not much was expected of him. They thought he had potential. And they traded Barry Peterson, who was a solid player, 30-goal-a-year guy. Traded Barry Peterson, got Cam Neely. Neely came in and just instantly was a hit. He just fit in, him and Adam Oates on a line, and he was scoring 40 goals a season and taking the town by storm. And he would fight, he would be physical, he could score goals. He was, again, a Boston player. He fit the mold. A good thing about living where I live is I'm close to Provenance. So I catch a lot of these guys on the way up. So when they're playing in Provenance, we'll get an autographed puck, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't, but then they make it to Provenance and say, hey, remember when we got that? That was way back in the day. I think right away of Brad Marchand. When he started in Provenance, he was not a big prospect. He was not seen as a guy who was going to amount to much. And I remember sitting down with him at one of the Bruins events, through Booster Club. They have events, you get to meet the players, you get to know them a little bit when they're younger. And I remember sitting with him, and he signed a couple things, and we got to talking, and I said, well, this is this is great. This will be, the big thing someday. And he says, well, yeah, if I can ever make it. So just, the humbleness, and that's something that hockey players have, and the humble and the work it takes and the amount of time. And everybody there is a great athlete, but not everybody can make that next step. Like Brad Marchand, from a fourth liner in Providence, made himself to one of the top goal scorers in the league now. My best stories from Providence are from 1999 when they won the Calder Cup, because that was a tough year for me. I mean, I got divorced early in '99, so really jumped into the Bruins with both feet. And they had a really strong team that year, and we got to know some of the guys. So being single and not having to go home right after the game, got to go out to the local restaurants after the games and stuff, and ended up getting to know some of the guys through hanging out with them. So when they won the Calder Cup, they closed the restaurant that we always went to, but they said this guy could stay. They selected people who they knew who could stay, so we got to celebrate with the team afterwards and drink out of the Calder Cup, and that was fun. And then they had a parade in downtown Providence, and I remember standing on the side of the road, and some of the guys saw me, me and my friend Ben, and they called us over, guys, come on in, and they wanted us to come into the car with them, be part of the parade. I declined that one because, no, you guys won the cup. I had nothing to do with it. You guys go enjoy it. I'd say one of the strangest ones, a good friend of mine who does a lot of collecting himself, he works for a high school. His father-in-law was the athletic director at a local high school, and they do bingos there. It's a Catholic high school, so they do bingo nights to raise money. And I got a call from him one night. He says, Paul, you have any Canadiens pucks? I was like, I'm sure I do. He says, grab 2 and come over here right now. I said, why? He said, Bobby Sheehan is the gaming commissioner, and he's here inspecting our bingo parlor tonight. So I rushed over with 2 Canadian pucks, and he was thrilled to sign them, and he sat there and told stories for us. So a lot of fun stories like that. He played in the 70s, so he was part of those teams that would always beat the Bruins in the finals. But it was still great to hear those old stories. I'd say with the Bruins, more than the other 4 teams, our guys, after they're done playing, stay here. And you see them in the community, and you see them continue to live here and raise their families. A guy like Ray Bourque, a Hall of Famer, and one of the best players ever, my favorite player ever. And he's always said, Boston's my home. I mean, we were so starved for championships is that when he got traded to Colorado and won the Cup for the Avalanche, we held a big rally at City Hall for Ray Bourque, and thousands of people turned out. I know I was there. It's that connection. I mean, I'm never gonna step on the garden ice and skate or, get to score a goal or anything. But, I've had every one of these pucks, every one of these pictures is a story where I got to sit down with somebody, sometimes for a long time, but sometimes for 30 seconds or something, and just have that quick connection.
Watching hockey is best amongst other people. I try to recreate the atmosphere of going to see a game, basically. I know that not all of us are, able to go see a game. So the second best thing is to have, guys over here. Even if they lose, it doesn't matter. Just getting together and sitting in front of that television and screaming at the same time, or being, having all that joy at the same time. It's so euphoric. It just really makes hockey that much better. Being born and raised in Montreal, the Canadiens are everywhere, and playing hockey myself as a youngster, everything was about the Habs and the Canadiens and their winning pedigree. Sort of like it just it pushed everybody in this city to sort of like the Habs, and it was just something you wanted to be a part of, that winning atmosphere. This is the Habs cave, as everyone has coined it. It's a man cave that I just sort of started out building for the guys to hang out. And, I just was able to display all my memorabilia that I've been collecting over the years. And it's just become this great gathering place to watch Habs games. It started with hockey cards, basically, and as a youngster, being, born and raised in Canada, hockey is everywhere, and you play hockey, you collect the cards, you watch hockey. I remember, opening my first pack of hockey cards and having something sort of tangible in my hands that I can, turn on the television and see that player, but then have that player in my hand. It just sort of ignited this passion in me. As a youngster, I would start collecting, and I had nowhere to display a lot of this stuff. I just kind of kept it away. And I had a closet or a trunk full of this stuff, and I said, one day I will have the space to display this stuff, and I'll do it. And I did it. Like a lot of man caves I've seen, because man caves are getting larger, like bigger and bigger. People are making a man cave. It's just a lot of memorabilia and maybe a few seats and a little TV. I'm blessed to have the room to have all this. But again, my focus wasn't to, I could have just made it all a museum, but I have a lot more memorabilia that is not on display here. But I decided to sort of, focus on making it a place of like where people can hang out and watch the game first and foremost. And then everything else sort of filled in after that. This is where we watch the games, and I have about 25 seats here, so that all aimed to the television, and the focus is the hockey game. It always is. And again, during the intermission, that changes. Everyone gets a drink or whatnot and starts to play some of the games, and I enjoy the atmosphere and the sounds of the arcades, etc. And that's what makes it fun. I tried to emulate the Bell Center here with the banners on the top, the scoreboard light, and and we got the legends here, so it's just adorned by the 24 Stanley Cups over here. I wouldn't mind adding another one, but one day that will happen, I guess. It's just a passion of mine, and I'm not trying to show off or sell anything. I'm just trying to put goodness out there, any hockey goodness out there. It's just, and anything I receive in return is great. Like I love getting positive feedback. It's fantastic. A lot of people like to challenge me. They said, do you have this player? Do you have this player? Somewhere in here, I have their autograph. Like I haven't cataloged it all, but it's got to be in here. So people are always asking me, what about this player? What about that player? Of course, Habs players. But somewhere in here, I probably have most of the autographs somewhere in there. I have a lot of seats from the original Forum. So I have 13 seats, lucky enough to have 13. Having 4 in a row is pretty... It's a good find to get 4 in a row, because that's a tough get. On the back of them, you could see the different layers of paint that they've gone through. They're coming to 100 years old, these seats. So, and what's great is I have a seating chart, an original seating chart from the Montreal Forum. So a lot of the seats that I have down here, I can track, and you could see where they were. People always ask me, what happened to these seats? What are people doing to them? I'm like, they're 100 years old. I mean, they've seen the Beatles, Muhammad Ali, they've seen the Rolling Stones. They've seen all 24 Stanley Cups, so it's just, I think they're amazing to own, and I'm really lucky to have them. Here's a rather unique piece, which is a divider from the old Montreal Forum, section 118. So this is kind of unique. It weighs a ton. Traveled quite a distance to pick it up, but I was happy that someone reached out to me and said, hey, this might look good in your space, and I was happy to rush out there and pick it up. Ken Dryden mannequin. I like the fact that he's kind of keeping guard over here, but it's a classic pose, and it's just so Montreal Canadiens. Putting stuff like this together is a lot of fun. Scouring, the internet and having people, contact people. Hey, do you have a glove? Do you have a blocker? The pads I acquired by a gentleman in Quebec City, and the blocker and glove came from like another place in Ontario. So it's putting it all together like a puzzle is a lot of fun. This Stanley Cup here is something else that I like to take around with me. It's a 2-foot replica of the Stanley Cup. I'm at about 63 former Montreal Canadiens players have Stanley Cup winners that have signed this. And again, I have a list, and so whenever there's a signing of a player that, former Habs player that has won a cup, I take this out and I bring it with me. It's got a little velvet bag, take it out, and so like it gives me so much pleasure to add more signatures to this guy. It's fun to like still be like as a child on a hunt, I know I'm an adult, but it's still fun to to just, find these players, get an autograph. I still feel joy. A lot of people thought it was strange or that I took it to this sort of extreme. It's hard for me to say no. If it's something I don't have and it's Habs related, pretty hard to say no. If it's, it usually I'll just take it and I'll figure it out. Half of it's a shrine to Patrick Roy. I'm not going to deny it. I'm a huge Patrick Roy fan, and he was really sort of like for a generation of goalies, the man, and he really sort of changed the game. And there's so many French Quebec goalies that are, are goalies because of him. I was 13 years old in this picture, and I think it was the first time I met Patrick. Just kind of one-on-one. So I stood in line for, 7 hours because it was an event at Zeller's at the time. And they had just won the cup. And yeah, I was first in line. And so I got to spend like a great amount of time with Patrick because he really did spend time with me knowing that I stood in line probably for 7 hours. And he signed everything that I had. And it was such a great experience. I'll never forget it. And years later, obviously, I was able to get the picture autographed by Patrick himself, and he did remember that day, which was really awesome. Anything to do with Patrick was huge for me. So to ever imagine owning the stick he used in like 1986 or even in 1993 when they won the Stanley Cup, to me, it's outrageous to think that I have something of his in my basement. And I cherish it and love it, and I wouldn't part with it. If he ever made his way down here, that would be really a dream come true. It could happen. I'm trying to make it happen. It could happen one day. Anything's possible. This is now art for my generation. I'm not like my parents where I'm buying a painting. I'd much prefer to buy a Patrick Roy autographed jersey and put that on my wall, and that's art to me. I mean, look how colorful it is, how beautiful it is. When it's framed and presented in such a way, I really believe it is like artwork. And it does retain value if you're talking about investment-wise. It does, it is an investment. I personally have never bought a piece because of its value. I've always bought it because I loved it and I want to share it, and it just makes me happy. But if it's worth something in the end, great. But at the same time, I'll never sell something. Anything I've brought into my basement it hasn't been for investment purposes. So if I've taken the time to sort of, bring something into this cave, display it, it's very hard for me to even make a trade. I feel guilty about parting with anything in here, even though I know, okay, I've traded, I've acquired something else. It's hard for me not to think about what I gave up for the new item. It's just hard. Like it's not something that, like I said, it's not easily. It doesn't come easily to me to give up anything in here. A lot of this collection is nostalgia driven because, who doesn't want to remember the good stuff? And I feel like when I'm down here, I'm surrounded by the good stuff. And when you come down here, and when I tell my friends to come down here, I'm like, put the rest of that stuff away in the upper level. You're down here, forget about all that stuff. Let's have some fun. Surround yourself with the goodness and the richness and the history of the Canadians, and let's just watch hockey.